thank everyone for coming. Just so you know, hopefully by the end of the weekend, this recording will be up on our YouTube page, and if you haven't subscribed, please do so. This is a special night. Having John Stanmeyer with us is really a treat. He pushed some things back and moved things around. He's on a flight tomorrow to Jordan. So I really appreciate John, finding a way to make this work. And it starts off a week of content about the Ukrainian war and what's going on there. And we have a whole bunch of photographers lined up for next week. Ron Haviv, David Bertow, Alex Laurie, Julia Tovid. And tonight we start with John Stanmeyer, who's one of the founding members of Seven, the photo group, who's been around the world covering conflicts for too many years. But he's always there when we need him. So
this,
John, I give the floor to you.
Trying to tell Frank that I'm Stoles.
Well, thank you, Frank. And thanks for everyone being here and seeing familiar faces. I didn't spend as much time as a lot of my colleagues did. Ron Haviv, who will be joining you at the closing of this wonderful series that you're doing, he went in, maybe a week or two before the actual war began. And before Russia invaded, and by February 24th, when it all really sort of began, I just couldn't sit here on the porch or in the studio in the other room and keep editing for a book that I'm doing. I needed to somehow play an insignificant role in all of this, and I do what I often do when really committed and believing in something. I'll send myself to play some role that I never really know what I'm going to do, even though I know the background and the history of it. I've been to Ukraine uncountable number of times to the airport. I've been to the Kyiv airport.
John, just let me interrupt you. What's the tipping point for you? I gotta go. Like, what happens to you?
You gotta go.
Sadness.
Yeah. Okay.
It's when humanity reaches its lowest level of existence, which is war, hatred, division. I can't just sit here and not, again, barely put a little toe in the vastness. It's really, just a drop that fills an ocean, but many drops can fill an ocean. I'm just a drop, and that I feel that there's something that I can give, and the tipping point, I guess, it's really consciousness. Maybe it's not a tipping point. It's a moment of consciousness that I can't live within my own consciousness without trying to do, again, just a drop of an ocean into this vastness of the weakness of humanity.
Okay.
And so I've been to Ukraine physically more than just the airport, about 20 times. Many times I did a part of a National Geographic story, was in Ukraine and Uman. I hosted a workshop in Ukraine, in Kyiv. I'd been there maybe 2 other times, so I was very connected to it, and many friends there. It wasn't as if I, just flew in off the chair here and felt like I needed to be there for whatever reason. There was a personal reason for the human connection that I have to it, and really almost a spiritual connection as well. So that's really what lifted me and said I have to get up and do something.
Okay.
But in again the act of, I don't know what my role is yet. And I kind of feel that way on almost every story. And I never got to work with Elizabeth Chris at National Geographic, but I always wanted to. And we talked about it, and oh boy, it would have been such a gift. But now I can be vulnerable to you, Elizabeth, but I would be vulnerable to anybody with it. That every story that I do is really an act of I don't know. You do the research, you read books, you talk to everybody that you can before you go. But if I'm gonna say that I know what I'm gonna do, I'd be lying. And not only would I be lying, I'd be doing a disservice to the storytelling and to myself, because then I become blinded from all of the subtle, amazing nuances that only manifest themselves when you're in the physical presence. So sure, I knew there was a war going on. I've been in more crises like this than I care to count or process. But I don't go there to just do the news. There's incredibly talented individuals there that are, supplying that important message. And if it's a long form narrative like a geographic story, you really go as far lateral into almost a trance state of seeing the world or seeing the narrative or seeing the subject in a way that not necessarily is different. Maybe you hope so, but that you can really become, the vessel of sharing a narrative that we haven't seen before. So that's what I mean by the I don't know. I of course I know what I'm doing. I think I know what I'm doing, but it's that locking myself into one notion or idea of this is what I'm going to do will blind me, and I think blind all of us, by noticing from seeing the sheer either horror or majesty or astonishment, or really to even find, like writing a novel, it's like little notes until you start to understand the symphony that you're trying to write. Sometimes it'll pour from you, of course, right away. But I have to be in the presence of it. So anyway, so I'll screen share here, and I will be vulnerable and show you, how vulnerable I get. So do you see all these little bars everywhere floating?
Now it's gone, John.
Oh my gosh, it's just sitting here right in front of me, but
Yeah,
oh,
we
well.
don't see those.
Okay, well, I see it. That's all right. So by, I think, February 28th or thereabout, I finally get to the border with with Ukraine on the Polish side, on the Poland side. And there were, sure, a number of us in this profession that were in already there, but nothing like, came a week or two later. And but I didn't want to immediately cross into Ukraine. I wanted to sort of, again, feel what is happening, because I've seen mass exoduses of humanity all too often. And how do I approach this in a way that I can give something to it? In the beginning of it, I don't know if anybody remembers all of this tragicness, but people of color were treated completely differently when they were trying to leave Ukraine. And I'd heard about it because it was right in the really early days of the war. And this tree became sort of emblematic to me, because it's really where now at this point, and let's see, now there's 5 million Ukrainians have left their homeland. Probably from this border, at least 3 million human beings have crossed. And in the early part of the war, this tree was sort of a sanctuary where people would stand under or sit under, trying to figure out where to go. And so I crossed the border probably on the 1st of March. And it's impossible to photograph or film because you're, security and border patrols and police and military are there. But I couldn't believe what was taking place at the border. Literally, like in caged off areas, around 5,000 to 6,000, maybe more, mostly men, and really all people of color, whether from South Asia, Africa, Central Asia, South America. There were tens of thousands of people studying in Ukraine, because the education is very good there, and it's much more inexpensive than going to a very high-end, private university in Europe and what have you. It's easier to get visas for those of the majority world trying to get access to education, but they were separated, and many of them took what would normally be a few-hour process, 4 to 6 days to cross no person's land. And I can tell you with absolute certainty, when I finished after security and the military were yelling at me to don't film or photograph, when I spent maybe an hour or two on the Ukrainian side and came back, it took me an hour and a half to cross only, instead of 4 to 6 days. And I was greeted on the Polish side with hot tea and sweets, because I'm a white person and completely treated differently. So I really absolutely embrace the power of this thing called social media. I don't have a mammoth following of millions, but I can reach about 500,000 people. And I put together a short story that sort of went haywire in the realm of social media, about this unfortunateness of somebody wants to join here. I'll admit them. That was taking place at the border. So I love doing films. I love the complexity of a narrow 9:16 vertical format. So this I just recorded off of my Instagram stories. The story has been viewed about 10,000 times and shared about 1,000 times. So you really have the ability to reach many, many people. So here's a short story with captions, because I like to caption my Instagram stories as well as audio. And this is just literally the first or second day I'm in the theater of war. But how do I make this run?
في واحد عاجز عايز يمشي محتاج اسعاف او حد يشيله يعني.
It was literally just a 300-meter stretch of land. Bethel here told me he'd been there for 4 days.
Now calling back auntie's name, why?
Actually, 4 people have unconscious, 2 people have died. 1 people completely they have wrapped over there by the aluminum foil. The another, I don't know that another one. Just they 4 persons took to that unconscious body and just they go away. After that, we don't know the condition of that. Like that, so many problems were there. Children were crying, the world women, so many people are suffering. Can you see that crowd? Is this a queue of human beings? It's like a, what is it? Nowadays, when you go on the farm, there will be systematic the farm also, the guard, safe, they have a proper life. You cannot imagine over there. It's not a human being. Police doesn't care about the issue of that. There are people, they are sending outside the country very easily with full safety and everything. To the foreigner, they are behaving like a not human being. This is a totally unfair and cruel.
And so just I love just doing these little stories that really touch people. These little love hearts that people keep thumbing. Sorry, that's from the screen recording that comes off of the Instagram stories.
And John, do we have any sense of what was there overt racism before the war started? Did these people feel marginalized? And because they're young men and women who were, smart in university, did they feel this racism beforehand? Do we know?
I talked to so many, Frank. I had a 10-minute interview with another. They had it, they felt it, but never overly oppressive. They were accepted and welcomed because I don't know all the narratives of exactly why, but when the system broke within the country, you would almost could say that it was more difficult on the Polish side, let's just say. Because the Ukrainians would let them go through, but then they were bottlenecked in no person's land, where humans divide up the earth and put invisible lines that birds and elephants and whatnot can cross. But if you don't have the right passport, or you don't look the right way, in a conflict, especially, you're treated astronomically different. Again, as I said, when I crossed the border, because it's very difficult to film here, almost all of it, and even photograph had to be done with just the camera that makes phone calls. I went back in an hour and a half, so completely treated differently. And then UNICEF brought me in for a very short 3-day story, and I was thankful for the project, but I still kind of didn't know what my purpose was there yet. Of course, I knew what it was. They wanted to do a story about the refugee crisis, especially women, because 90-some% or more, 98% of the 5 million that have left Ukraine are women and children. Anyone male who's over 18 or under 60 must stay in country to fight in the war, to keep things running, so to speak, in regards to the conflict that the Ukrainians were having. So, I knew the narrative, and at this point now, a few days into it, we're the numbers of us are there, and keep thinking to myself, okay, I'm going to do this story, I'm going to give to it endlessly, but there still has to be more. And I just felt like I was, giving to the narrative, but sort of presenting the same narrative that everybody else was presenting. And important as it was, I gave to the story because it was important, but they also were looking for different, not just Ukrainians. Like this is a family from Vietnam. They'd been in Ukraine for over 20 years. Spoke Ukrainian, had Ukrainian passports, but were also brought through the foreigner aisle, let's just say, of the immigration line. So, just to photograph people standing there, and important to get their stories and talk to them endlessly, was important. But I still felt like, gosh, there's got to be something more. I have to give more to it. And every night, every day, it was incredibly cold, almost every day freezing. We were still in the throngs of winter, and I know these are important moments, but I torment myself imagining that I'm not doing enough, that I'm not giving enough. And then spent time with mothers and their children. This was Tamara. She had 2 children, left her husband back in the outskirts of Kyiv. She doesn't know where she's going, all the important narratives, but that just felt like we were all telling. And I needed to, again, sort of somehow find a way to give more to it. This was Yulia with her dog, countless animals leaving, another family in a refugee center. And now I look at this and, boy, this is just such heavy history, and it's still going on today. But I think, how can I expand the narrative? This is Irianka. She was taken into a family's home in about 2 hours from the border. Hold on, let me add. Can somebody admit this? Because I'm and they're still living out of their luggage. 4 days into the war. Because they never know when at this point they thought maybe they'll go back sooner than later. And of course that unfortunately hasn't happened. But I'm still like just looking through the camera going, gosh, this is important, but I got to feel more. And I torment myself all the time like this, Frank. Another home, a very wealthy home, a woman owns a very wealthy woman owns a giant farmhouse, and she converted the whole home into housing for 40 women and children. You spend time there. They're so kind and gentle, and you try to make some images of meeting, and then I still am in torment. And I finally get to Lviv maybe 10 days later. And every day, and I was going to go onto Kyiv, but I thought, let me spend some time in Lviv, just so that I can, again, get a sort of a deeper sense of why am I here? And every day in the garrison church, were funerals and of soldiers that were being killed. And I just couldn't photograph it anymore. There's maybe 30 photographers around me, and I just felt like, let these people bury their children. What am I going to give to this? I know it needs to be seen, but how am I going to expand it when everything is the same? How do we? Again, Frank, I torment myself like this all the time.
John, how do you deal with sort of this inner crisis that? Does it always happen to you when you're traveling and covering the stories that you cover? I mean, is that like sort of your MO?
I don't have any. What's an MO?
No,
What
like
is that for?
no, just like this always happens to you, and it's just eventually it comes. Like
I see. I guess so. I think so. It's I'm repeating myself maybe, and my apologies. I know the reasons of every project that I do. I do a tremendous amount of research and what have you. And in this case, I've been so many times to Ukraine, more conflicts than I want to count. And I am tired of photographing the same madness, Frank. I've seen this the last 25 years. And not that you cannot change the world. I learned that a while ago. But you have to change individual consciousness. And in this act of trying to change consciousness, I have to go into my own consciousness to go beyond my own understanding, so that I can, if in my own simple way, try to find an expanded way to make myself think, in order for, I would imagine, or I hope, to have others who have far greater power than I have to change, because we cannot change the world unless we change the individual. And that's where, when I'm seeing this importance of funerals, if we're just seeing the same thing over and over again, I don't want to say we get desensitized, but it becomes the norm. It becomes unpleasantly normal. And so I don't know if I, not have to reinvent the wheel or anything like that, but maybe, yes, maybe. And I got fascinated by this sort of like Christo art wrappings of monuments at churches and in roundabouts, and it's just the most bizarre things happen in war, that I kept going, I'm not going to go to Kiev yet. I'm going to stay here and just keep feeling this and feeling it. And and you know, just simple things, but sort of like strange poems. Sort of like you photograph one doorknob, it's a picture of a doorknob. Photograph multiple doorknobs, and it becomes an art project. Photograph one statue, it's a statue. Photograph a bunch of them, and it's the bizarreness of war. And then I went to the Lviv train station, where you know many went, and I go, what do I do here? This is how I'll go to Kyiv, and I. This is now like a week I'm in Lviv, still trying to feel why I'm there. And I'm photographing the movement and mass, you know, of humanity going, and I'm seeing the same things that I'm seeing in the New York Times and Washington Post, Spiegel and Stern and The Guardian. Important, and I'm hopefully playing my little role in this, but I just kept feeling. Go ahead, Frank.
Yeah, I mean, do you keep notes? You keep a diary of your
Yeah.
travels, and like you say, writing a poem. I mean, so you find comfort in that. Okay.
I find comfort in meditation of why I'm there, and really in physical meditations every day. And then at the railway station, I would be there 8-10 hours in the day. There was a turning point, you know, after sort of feeling like I'm photographing the news, and as important as it is, I'm not giving enough, because I'm seeing all of this already and being published as it should be everywhere. A woman died on the platform. She just died trying to leave. And you know, I just get saddened, you know, reaffirming why I left here, and then suddenly something, consciousness within myself was feeling I'm beginning to understand why I'm here. And it started when I came upon a group of Ukrainian military men leaving, saying goodbye to their partners. I'd love to remember everybody's name, and I just suddenly forgot their name. And this, you know, I felt like I was back in the 1940s, witnessing, you know, the strangenesses that we do as human beings to each other, which is one of the many things, but war is probably the most egregious. And yes, I was seeing all these images of, you know, trains and people saying goodbye, and you know, she's touching her partner's hand before he was going out to the right in the front lines in Donbass, before the real insanity of the Donbass region was going. I have no idea, you know, if he's still alive or not. And then I realized the tome is the narrative of lost. Everyone had this stare in their eye that we will all have if we are brought into the act of forced migration. And I've seen that stare elsewhere, uncountable times. But there was something different here because it was framed. It was framed in these windows that was sort of this lost desire, and of not desire to be lost, but this lostness and the desire of understanding what's going on and where am I going. And you know, I was just acutely feeling everything that was taking place through these perfectly almost square at time windows. You know, a child just exhausted, a man in tears in the car. And for then the next 10 days, I went every day to the railway station for all day long into the night, and getting brought in to these windows that just were tearing me apart because I was photographing myself.
And John, so now you've come upon what it is, right? You've had your moment. So what does that do to you as far as like is it a creative liberation for you? What does that, what happens?
It's probably, Frank, an added level of torment. I don't live in torment. I guess maybe I sometimes do, but maybe I'm using the wrong word. At this point, I knew I wanted to make a film.
Okay.
So the photographs were sort of the anchor pieces, the chapters or the stanzas, and it was, how do I give to the narrative to tell this, and doing it, Frank, and to all of you who are so kind to be here on your Friday evening, in 9:16 vertical filmmaking, knowing I was going to use this incredibly powerful platform that we wrongly call social media. It's really publishing. It only becomes social when we interact with each other. Because I wanted to reach people. I'm not an assignment. I'm there now on my own. I'm not even looking for assignments. I'm asking seven, I just want to focus on this film. I know not necessarily what I'm fully doing, but I do know what I'm doing now, and I have to give myself to it. So maybe this next level was a moment of enlightenment, and then I had to fall into it and tell the story, both in photographs and in film and in sound. And that's where I really get a real almost internal rapture of, not excitement, because this is a very depressing situation, but that I now know my purpose, and I have to give to it.
And that's a weekend, right? It's a weekend that you found it?
It took about 5 days,
Okay.
almost a week. And so it just kept looking at the windows and talking with everyone. Very hard to communicate through the windows because they can't hear you. But dogs are even going, and but just this look, the stare that all of us would have when you have no idea where you're going and how the world has been turned upside down. And so I hope there's no talking in this film, but here is
One question, John, one question before you started. Do you ever think of getting on that train?
I went in the train. I thought about, I'm going to go back on the train, because I had to go back through Poland, because the airport in Kyiv was totally shut down and now probably obliterated, unfortunately. But the narrative, when you're sort of writing a novel or writing a musical score, let's say, or in this case, creating a photo essay or a film, felt more giving to present it in the way of this distance loss, not distance from the subjects. You'll see in the film. I think you'll see the film, because the film brings in much more. Now I suddenly forget her name, but I talked much at length with her partner. 3 kids, the wife. The train pulls out, her on the track, completely in tears, because he has to go back and head toward the front line to fight in the war. This was over and over, Frank. This is like, uncountable number of times every day. It was emotionally debilitating in many aspects, but nothing in the debilitating nature that everyone who kindly let me into their world was feeling, that any one of us could feel if the humanity and civility breaks in where we live. We think we're so protected here. We've had calamities, often here in the past, and we never know what's going to happen a minute from now, let alone, years from now. So it really is a story that connects all of us. So here's the film. It's all captioned, so I don't know if you have a big enough screen to watch it. It's just to music that I paid for to have, because I didn't have time to compose it. Oftentimes I'll compose my own music but I came back from Ukraine wanting to edit this here in studio. So here's the film. that's sort of where I
That's
started
unbelievable, John.
begin to sort of understand and sort of the magnitude. We got 80 million people around our planet that are forced to move because of war and all sorts of reasons. It's the dance of the mess of humanity. Whoopsie, sorry, I didn't mean to stop that. So that was sort of where it felt that something meaningful came together. And since that film, when I published it, it's been viewed 50,000 times and shared uncountable number of times. And even though it's my own personal, doing, that's what I realized that I was there for. And yeah.
No, I think, looking at the images with the hands against the glass, I bet you at some point that becomes the statue of this war. I mean, that is so powerful, with the glass in between those two hands.
Well,
It's
that's
stunning.
that's where I the images on the inside have meaning too, of course. But when you have this metronome of enormity repeating itself over and over, I can't determine or would ever say how anybody feels, but I was photographing and filming myself.
Mm.
And then just to sort of something interesting that occurred again in this sort of power of this thing called social media. On my last day, I enter every day going to the railway station. I never went to Kyiv. I needed to get back here for some personal needs, and I wanted to edit the film. I need a very fast, situation and setup to do that. And there was another moment where I thought I'd go, but how many more images do we need of dead bodies? And we need to see that. But what was I going to add to it? And I felt that this film needed to be put together. And so I left. And on the last day, every day going to the station was a young gentleman playing the piano. He had brought his piano to the steps of the railway station, and I'd always hear him play. And on the last day, I go, I got off the tram and I go, I'm going to do some filming with a microphone that I put on the end of my camera that makes phone calls, which I use a lot. And I'm just going to photograph, really just record for the audio. But I'll just, focus on his fingers moving or something. And as soon as I picked up the camera and pressed the record button, what's going on here? Why am I not advancing? Sorry, there's something not working. I put this in here because I didn't know if I was going to speak or not. Something that was so simple and became so unusual. As soon as I pressed the record button, the air raid sirens went off. And he wouldn't leave. And then the air raid app I have an air raid app that I still keep on my phone, Frank. It went off and cut off the video at 1 minute, 8 seconds because the siren demands all attention. The app on my phone, it's about a minute delay from the actual air raid siren that you hear on the streets. It cut it off. And Alex just refused to go in and refused to stop playing. And I went into the station, which I was going on the last day, and I thought, this is really strange. This was really surreal. He's playing to the rhythm of the air raid sirens, Hans Zimmer's time. And I put it on my Instagram stories or a reel or something like that. And it went pretty haywire. And the next day, this happens. Hans Zimmer is in the O2 Arena in London with 20-some thousand people, and his daughter, who follows me on Instagram, Zoe Zimmer, sees the video on my feed. And
so my daughter found this video online, which I'd love to show you. I hope it works so we can show you. It's just an Instagram video of somebody playing time under different circumstances while the sirens are going off. Can you run the video?
Unbelievable.
20-some thousand people see this. He plays at this point it's cut to 1 minute because that's all that reels will allow. And I won't let you have to listen to the whole thing again. And everybody, I start getting messages on Instagram from people who were there, people who saw it. It had already been shared about, I don't know, thousands of times on my feed. Then Hans Zimmer does another post where he talks to Alex about it.
Hello, Alex. This is Hans Zimmer, and I am just astonished by your rendition of time in the time of crisis. I am astonished how what you do with music absolutely lifts the spirit of the Ukrainian people. We are on your side. We will play time for you tonight. We will always play time for you. We will always be there. Thank you.
And that film now has been viewed over 10 million times, 50-some thousand shares. Maybe 500 or more direct messages I've received. I respond to everybody who messages me. Alex, so kind. He had about maybe 900 followers on Instagram after this occurred and after publishing. He knows nearly 30,000 people that are wonderfully following what he does. And sort of it really was touching to me on how my last day doing this very simple thing. So I'm going to stop screen sharing now. Just the beauty of what happens when something oftentimes really simple is occurring, like Alex, playing the piano and the air raid sirens go off right when I press the record button. But just sort of falling in and in this act of not knowing, I don't know, sort of the universe of possibilities presents itself.
And so, John, I mean, one thing is, do we know who the girl's hand was with the pink?
I keep asking Alex, or we talk all the time and email each other and message each other. She's another performer that has another piano about 20 meters away, and I can get her name. I should, because I just was only again recording for the audio. I use this, actually I have it right here, this special microphone that attaches to my camera, and I was not expecting these beautiful purple pink fingernails and fingers to join in. It was again just sort of, okay, it's just the sound, but all of the layers of it, and in its enormous simplicity, It really resonated with so many people. Anderson Cooper did a story about it on CNN. Numerous publications in Europe. Alex has just been seen everywhere from such a simple act of doing a recording of him for
So-
B-roll that never went in the film. It didn't feel appropriate to bring it into the film. Different pace and power.
So it took you 4 or 5 days to figure out why you were there and what you wanted to capture. And then so you get past that point, I know why I'm here. And now, that you've put it all together, do you get a satisfaction out of it? What happens to you as far as I pulled this together, it's beautiful, I love it, and I'm satisfied. Do you get to the satisfied point?
Oh no, none of that, Frank. No, I'm like ripping myself apart to go back. I already am beginning to feel, although I won't know until I go back, what I want to tell in a next layered story of inevitably will probably be a film, but it'll be driven by photography. And satisfied? No. I'm thankful. I think it worked. I'm too connected to it. It came together, but then I get, if there's any excitement, not excitement that I like to photograph war and film war, but what can I feel next? I have to feel before I can see. If I just see, I'm just seeing the surface. If I go in, and I guess maybe that's a way to try to explain the I don't know. The power of the I don't know is the giving beyond what I'm just seeing.
So when you finish this turned out to be beautiful, very poignant, perfect. Does it sort of give you like a justification? This is the right way for me to operate when I'm going to do a project. This is the way it works for me, and I
No.
feel comfortable in that.
No, because I want to expand. I want to throw myself off the precipice and see where I land next time. I don't really like anything that I do, Frank. I mean, I
Okay.
felt something, and if I come from, in a past life, I was a fashion art photographer in Europe. And I was very young, and everything started way too quick and way too fast. And if I kept doing it, I probably wouldn't be here anymore. And I was young and too blinded by the enormity of reality around me. I was only interested in giving to what was in my imagination. And it's limitlessly creative. I no regrets of 4 years living in Italy and working for Harper's Bazaar and the Uomo Vogue and Interview magazine. I was 21 years old, flying back and forth to New York and working for Interview magazine and hanging out with Andy Warhol and all this like whateverness is. But it was just sort of it was beautiful in the sense of the imagination that I could try to create into an image. But I wasn't seeing the enormity. I wasn't seeing at the time the enormity of the art and purpose of the art of reality. And when I had literally a rapture and almost breakdown of magnitude to understand what I wasn't paying attention to, I left everything that has to do with about me, because when you dance and interact in the art of reality, it's not about us. So how can I like anything if what I'm creating is the madness of humanity? The only thing I can give to is if the madness of humanity that I'm trying to not just show you dead. I can show you dead bodies. I can do a whole presentation here on bodies and bludgeonness and destruction that we do. And it's important to see. But I have to somehow go within to be able to, I hope, make at least one person think. If I can make one person think, I've done more than none. And if half the planet were to make another person think, we solve all the problems in the world, right? Probably not. But if we can change the individual, we can change the world.
No better words than that, John. My God, that whole presentation. If anyone has any questions, you can put them in the chat room or unmute yourself to talk to John. That would be fine. I mean, for myself, I'm totally humbled. I mean, that your presentation and your words are just they ring true on so many levels, and hopefully you've changed one or two of us tonight.
No, the thing is, we're here together because we get it.
Yes.
I want to reach people who don't get it.
Yeah.
John, you kept saying that you saw yourself in the windows. Can you expand upon that a little bit?
My mother was in Viennese, Austrian, and she became an internal refugee in her own country. She said the Nazis were terrible, and in all kindness to very close friends of mine who are Russian, she said the Russians were the worst. And her father was buried alive in front of her with other men in her town on the outskirts of Vienna, in a big hole, hearing nothing but men screaming. And those stories I listened to, she hardly really talked much about it. So I'm trying to come full circle, Susie, to your kind question. And when you don't have personal moments to feel these things, I don't think so. I hope not.
The deed's not going to end.
That's where I sort of have this, maybe the doorknob theory. Photograph one doorknob, it's a picture of a doorknob. Photograph many doorknobs, and it becomes a tome. And so I would see, like, my mother through the window of what it was like her leaving. I don't know if she left by train. She's not around for me to ask her. But I've had to not force migrate myself. I have this crazy thing called a passport that, lets me cross these invisible lines easily. But I can't help but go into another person's skin and realize that any of these situations, not just the Russian war in Ukraine, but anything that we witness could be us. Anything. We're all going to die. We're all temporary, and we're all going to be topsoil, and that's a beautiful thing. And what am I going to do? And what are we all going to do in this unbelievably beautiful temporary existence that we have? And really, if we don't remind ourselves that we are all going to die, we will continue to bludgeon each other in this most weakest way, because we forget the preciousness of this gift that we have to give in, called life. And so I'm sort of roundabouting again to your question. I do have a sense of talking in circles, but I always come back that I could be, you could be. I'm in a window here right now with you. I see myself in a little train window called a Zoom window. And we are all in that window together. And if I was able to allow someone to give themselves the inner empathy to experience that and realize that, I hope that little bit of nugget entered their consciousness, so that when they do see this tragedy taking place or other tragedies taking place, they can have a deeper understanding and a deeper consciousness about it.
Yeah. No better words than that, John. Really, really poignant, very beautiful, very calming to listen to you, I have to say.
I'm just another human being, Frank. That's all I am.
Yeah, no, but it's nice to hear it. It's nice to absorb it as a wake-up call sometimes. We all need that. We all need that.
It's not about us. I mean, we always hear that in our business, you know, it's not about us, but when you're dealing in the enormity of reality, it is all of us. It's not about me. It's about all of us.
Yeah, you're right. You're
And
100%.
our role as storytellers, our role as a great chef, right? Photography is like a chef. If you want to cook an experience, you can have that same, you know, soup or, you know, a paneer, but there's that incredible paneer that you've had somewhere before. That's because that person gave to that paneer, even though you've had paneer or whatever it is. I'm a vegan, so I'm I'm trying to think of something. I don't want to say like chicken, but okay, chicken. But
You said it.
but it's, you know, that memorable meal is because that person gave to it. And if we as storytellers, who are just human beings, who are just no different than a chef, the camera is the cooking pot, the lens is the ladle, and it's what you can put the ingredients in it, and you can follow a recipe, but it's just going to taste like this. But if you that magical, that moment that will resonate with you in the palate of your mouth and your consciousness is the same resonation. If we give, and I hope at times I can be a little successful at that, to give to the consciousness flavor, give to the flavor of our consciousness, so that we become little ambassadors or co-turners of the wheel of change. Otherwise, we're photographing the same nonsense.
No, that's true. Absolutely true. Okay. So if anyone has any other questions, you pop them in now. But everyone should know by Monday, this entire presentation will be up on our YouTube page, where if you go there, you can subscribe. John, I cannot tell you how much I appreciate you spending all this time with us. I know you're headed to Jordan tomorrow.
Thank you for
on a big trip. So we really, really do appreciate that. But I think, I mean, all I'm getting is wonderful comments in the chat room and applause. And thank you so much.
I'm applauding all of you for, again, being here on this lovely, at least cool Friday evening here in the Berkshires of Massachusetts. But thank you so much for being here.
And Elizabeth maybe puts it all into perspective. Thank you, John. Please stay safe. So in your travels, be safe.
Thank you. But I don't mean to close on this, but actually it's a beautiful thing. I hope that you'll see the beauty in it. I'm asked all the time to be careful. And Elizabeth, you know I love you dearly, so I'm not saying this, but every time I used to have a gallery coffee house up the road, and so I love coffee, and I use coffee as this sort of catalyst to create discussion around, you know, social issues and what have you. And people be like, you know, oh, I'm, you know, ask, where were you off to next? You're like, oh, I'm okay. In this case, I'm going to Jordan or whatever. Or I'm, you know, going to a conflict situation, or I'm just going anywhere. And people will be very kind, very kind. They'll say, oh, please be careful. And I always say, well, thank you so much, but, you know, please be careful taking a shower this evening, because about 20,000 people just in North America slip and die in a shower every year. And all we can do in this life is to dance it to the most giving way possible. And I would, I hope I come back from Jordan, is this thing I'm contained in, because there's so much more to do, and I cannot wait to wake up tomorrow morning. I can't wait to do the thing I'm even going to do tonight. But thank you, Elizabeth. But to all of us, be careful taking a shower tonight.
We will. And
Never, ever know.
Somebody had a question. Where does your film, where does it move from beyond this moment now, the film?
That's a good question. To me, it's in the universe of unbelievable possibilities. It's on this crazy thing we call YouTube. It's on this magical thing called Instagram. It's on Venmo or Venmo.
Vimeo.
No, Venmo's money. Vimeo.
Hey, John,
Whoa.
perhaps you could share the video link. I've had some people asking. Maybe I can put it in the chat room so if people wanted to watch the film again.
That's very kind of you. Hold on. Oh, donkeys are barking. Hey, girls.
Everyone's walking now.
Sorry, bear with me here. Oh, here it is.
And it'll also be on the full presentation. It'll be part of that as well.
Yeah, I'll copy it here. Sorry, it's taking longer than I thought. And plus, I got the doggies also. Happy dancer. I gotta send it to everyone. Can I do that?
Wow.
Yep, everyone.
There we go. Okay, so very, very kind. Yeah, I really don't know what to, where else do you go with it? I don't know. I mean, Seven has it, and we're really not known for moving films in the world.
Why now?
But
And I do have to tell everybody that all next week we have presentations speaking about the conflict in Ukraine. So please join us. We have a stellar lineup of presenters. So please see us there. John, again, thank you so much. I'm going to be really careful in the shower. You be careful traveling.
Well,
And we'll
Elizabeth, I
all
hope
be
you
okay.
didn't take that personally on it, but no, it's I've always been fascinated by my temporariness, even as a kid, and let's just all dance this existence to its highest possibility. That's what we're here for, and to give to that.
Right. Okay. Good night, everybody. Thank you, John.
Everyone,